Hello, class. Let's talk about resources. So, in economics, basically anything that you can use to produce something else, a good or a service, is called a resource. So, in economics, we classify basically every resource into four categories or types of resources: labor, capital, land. Land can also be thought of as natural resources, and entrepreneur. So let's go and define each type of resource as we think about them in economics. So the first one is labor. You can think of labor in two ways. You can think of labor as the number of workers, right? Or number of hours worked. Now, this is going to depend on mostly on the type of work that you're using. But so you can think of workers like a company can hire 100 employees, or you can think of, for example, in a very micro way, how many hours a week of labor have you actually done. So, as it relates to labor, we usually think, or any resource, we usually have to think about the type of payment that we receive. So for our labor, we usually classify that as wages. The second one that you see on that list is capital. Again, when we're talking about resources, we're talking about things that we use to produce other things. Now, capital, people usually associate it with money, but money it's already a good. Okay? So we're not going to think of capital as money in this class. We're going to think of capital as things that we can use for production. So in terms of capital, we have physical capital, and human capital. So, for physical capital, we have things such as tools, machines, buildings. See, all these things have already been built, but we can use them for producing something else. Okay? As far as human capital goes, right? These are things that belong to humans, right? Things that we accumulate over time in order to produce other things, such as our education, our experience, and our health. All of these things we are using in order to be productive. So, both of these things are types of capital. And think about the way that we usually accumulate capital. For example, your education, you might be familiar with, for example, paying your tuition in terms of with loans, with student loans, right? And even if you're paying with cash, you're still which we already understand that type of payment is cash. What you're paying actually with is something that we call interest. Now we can see that in education clearly, right? Because if you get a student loan, you have to pay the interest. Same thing for a building. Like, for example, what's a very basic type of building is a house. People usually get a loan and they have to pay their interest. But what you have to think about here is also that even if you pay for a house or your education with cash, you are giving up the interest that you would have gotten if you just kept your money in the bank, right? So that's something that we're going to cover later on when we think about how people make choices and opportunity cost. So the next type of resource that we're going to cover is land or natural resources. This is very simple. Right? Natural resources are gifts from nature. Right? And for short, usually I'll just refer to natural resources as land, right? But you can think of anything that comes from nature that is used for the production of goods and services as land, okay? And the way that we pay for land is through rent, okay? Now, finally, and this is probably the most important resource of them all, is the entrepreneur. Is the risk taker, the business owner. Right? The person that creates a business. They're called entrepreneurs, right? And we call them risk takers because they are taking the risk, right? They are taking the risk of, losing their assets, such as their money and their time, right? When you take out a loan to start a business, you're taking the risk, and the risk is that your business might not succeed, right? And for that risk, they get what we call profit, right? That's the type of payment that you receive for taking that risk, okay? So, now that we understand the 4 types of resources, let's go on and do a little activity with some examples. And all we're going to do here is classify each of these examples as a type of resources. Okay? So we have oil. Oil as in petroleum, right? What we get from the ground. Well, if we're getting it from the ground and it's already there, that means that it's a natural resources. So we're going to classify this one as land. Right? Let's go to letter B. Office building. It's a building, right? It was built and it's going to help us produce other things. So that is capital. And if you want to go ahead and classify it in what type of capital is it, this would be an example of physical capital, right? A small business owner. So you own a business. You're taking the risk of owning a business. So that means that you are an entrepreneur. Trees. Trees are coming from nature. So, for trees, we're going to call these land. An MP3 player. Now, this one is a trick because an MP3 player is a good that's already built. We don't use it to produce anything else. It's a final good. So this one has no classification. Notice that this one is the only one that we don't use for anything else. It's already being produced. Now, your teacher's education. So it belongs to me. I accumulate it over time, right? This is a type of capital. To be specific, it's human capital. Okay. A baseball player. Now, I want you to just focus on this one. Just think of when somebody hires a baseball player to play on their team, then they are basically just labor.